Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnelle Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. Oh, there's no result, so it's anything. Mitch, I know we're looking for a working title, but we cannot name the podcast The Business of Theater. I prefer Jimmies to Sprinkles.
Oh, Lord. You threw me with that one. You really did.
You did not see that coming.
I didn't see it coming. But now you have to explain it to everybody.
Okay, yeah, I like to throw you off at the top.
Yeah.
All right, this is The Business of Theater, a working title. I'm Darnelle Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And let's get down to business. So, today's working title is because as we are recording, we are kind of in the prefix of the 15th annual Jimmy Awards. And the Jimmy Awards is a high school level Tony Awards. I mean, to say the least.
Yeah. It's American Idol. It's Star Search, but except that it's musical theater oriented.
Yeah, and they can't be stopped. The talent on that stage is
it's amazing.
Yeah, so. If I know you're listening to this, hopefully it's afterwards. However, if you are listening to this in the week that I said I would post this episode, you should have time to stream it on demand through the 27th
of June.
So we'll see.
Right.
See what happens.
All right, let's give information. It's named after James Nederlander, who funded it and started it after two of his employees, one of which was Susan Lee, a lovely woman I worked for at one point, and somebody else who I don't remember. They had the idea that there are a lot of talented youngsters out there, and there's nothing to really bring them into the understanding of what it's like to perform at the Broadway level, even as high school kids. And what they do every year is bring, this year I think there are 101 high school students who had to go through regional contests. And it's not easy. I mean, this is like a Star Search. They bring 101 of them and they give them these dance routines and singing routines, and then they all perform individually, and then they get whittled down. And by the end of the evening, and it moves pretty quickly, but at the end of the evening, they actually choose a top 10 and then a top one. And somebody does become the winner. But just to note the level of these kids, the star and Tony nominee from Kimberly Akimbo, last year's Best Musical, Justin Cooley, he won the Jimmy Awards. And Andrew Bartholomew, I'm gonna mess up his name. He starred in Dear Evan Hansen on Broadway, and there's a whole list of them. They're young, but they are at that level where the voices and the dancing, they're triple threats at the age of 17. It just is shocking how good these kids are. So it's worth watching.
Also, Renee Rapp,
right?
Who was Regina George in the Mean Girls movie, also has some Jimmy Awards cred, if you will. Yeah,
it's really a process. It's fascinating. There are judges, and they of course have been working on this for a solid week here in New York, and there's been judging along the way. So you're not watching all 101 kids, perform individually in front of you. But it especially for those of us who see college graduates come out and they're all vying to get an agent or a manager in New York, and how do they move on? And then you compare what they did after college to what these kids already know how to do before college.
Mm-hmm.
And the Jimmies and we have to say Jimmies are not available on major networks. You have to watch them on, YouTube channel, and there's one other place you can watch it that's streaming, but they are not available on a major network. So that's an issue in of itself, but it's free. Duh.
Yeah.
You know? And
Yes.
And they perform on the stage of the Minskoff Theater here in New York. So which the Nederlanders own. It's one of their theaters. So, it makes sense.
I hope they gave themselves a good deal on that rental.
No, they're probably whoever is paying for the TV part of it, they're ripping them off, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it says ABC 7 is a sponsor though.
It may be a sponsor, but it's not performing.
Yeah, we'll see.
So maybe it's on their streaming channel.
Oh, here we are. Live stream links. Their primary YouTube stream, like these are all on their website, but it's YouTube and Facebook Live.
Facebook
you can watch
Live.
It on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
because it's not primarily trying to advertise, it is for the kids, right? And I'll be honest, and for agents, managers, directors, choreographers. I mean, when you need young people, you might as well look at the Jimmies. It's a great audition place.
So let me ask, in your opinion, do you think they get more value out of this 1 week than they would an internship?
Internship as what?
I don't know. Anything in theater. I'm saying like it's intense. Do you think they learn more in this 1 week than they would learn in an internship?
I don't know. It depends what kind of job you're interning for. Certainly as a performer, the problem when you're young, college and high school, is everything is more like camp. And so you're there and you end up with best friends for a week and socialization. And, it's not really learning the business of theater. And that I think you need an internship for. This is just, let's see how good you can, what standards you as a performer can rise to. So that's a wonderful lesson. They will never just be ordinary performers after doing the Jimmies. Yeah. They will understand the whole. You'll never be a kid
out of that.
Yeah,
that's what they should say on the way out. Thanks a lot, kids. You'll never be a kid again, kiddo.
Which leads us to, unless you want to stay on the Jimmies, to company.
No, we can segue.
Look at that! How good
store chimes in comes company.
Weren't you going to sing something about the Jimmies?
No, I was looking for Jimmy's songs, and the only thing we could think of quickly was Jimmy Mac, and it was so dated.
Yeah, and as you mentioned before we went on.
However, it is kind of a summer song, though, Jimmy Mac. Yeah, all those songs. It's like Meet Me on South Street. All those, they all sound the same. They would play in a summer playlist.
Well, there's also, as you mentioned before, there's Jimmy the Musical, which I actually am old enough to have seen. I'm not insulting anyone. I think it wasn't very good. Somebody will argue with me, I'm sure. 1969. Wow. Okay, so that'll tell you, and how much of an impact that's had on our future in musical theater. Right. Anyway. Yeah. Moving on to company. I stumbled across some YouTube videos of one of my favorite numbers of all time is Side by Side from the musical Company. And for those of us who were lucky enough to see the Hal Prince Michael Bennett version in 1970 when it opened, that number was a vaudeville. It had, as with most of Sondheim's songs in that show, it was sarcastic. It's opened Act 2. And one of the great moments in it, the entire cast of couples who are befriending Bobby, who is a single and wondering why he's still single. But the couples come out and they sing, "What would you do without me?" Right? And that's what the part of the song is about. And it's real fast paced, and they're huffing and puffing, and they're singing, and they're being their couples. And there comes a musical interlude. They run off stage, and they come back as a marching band. And we're talking about, these are older people, right? All the way up to Elaine Stritch. And she's the last one to come out. And while they have a trombone and a drum, she comes out with an accordion. And to watch Elaine Stritch run out on stage as the last member of a marching band with an accordion in the middle of a number that doesn't have an accordion in it, and they do a little dance with their instruments, and they do that, and then they run off stage, and they drop their instruments, and they come running back on, and there's a portion of the music that just goes, and they all do it in time. One of my favorite parts of any musical. Well, I also saw, again, I stumbled on this, the Dunbar Playhouse, is a Playhouse Dunbar in London, did a version of Company with, great, I'm Adrian, the actor's name, who's a wonderful, and I mentioned it to you before, you don't remember who I said. Anyway, he starred in it.
Well, we'll figure it out.
Lester, Adrian Lester, there we go.
Okay.
And the interpretation of that number, which is fully online if you want to go to YouTube, was so different. They played it as if the entire number was his cocaine dream. I mean, how far from the original can you get? He's going through a cocaine total trip to where he's just falling on the floor while he's doing splits, dancing on stage with the other couples. It was so different, and it worked, of course. But that is, to me, what excites me about musical theater. Allowing people to reinterpret things. The reinterpretation of Oklahoma a couple of years ago that they did here in New York and went to London, that was completely different than anything we've seen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Those people who don't understand interpretation, that's what we need to embrace. It makes it brand new, and that's what makes great writing great writing.
Yeah. Speaking of reinterpretation, and thank you for leading the way you did, I was thinking about this weekend, and I've seen a lot of shows in June. I feel like there's like three shows I think is manageable, but still a lot. But like 4 shows a week, it's a lot.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. But over the weekend, I celebrated my birthday with my partner. He and I our birthdays are a few days apart from each other. So we always go to New York and we take in a show. And Saturday we saw Cats, the Angelical Ball. And it was at Perlman Performing Arts Center. It's the new ornate box next to the 9/11 Museum.
Right.
And it was, the way I've described it is, it's if Cats and a documentary on ballroom culture had a baby. And it's like the way they reinterpreted Cats by also celebrating the history of ballroom culture. And there were a lot of artists who were involved who are a part of the ballroom culture in some way. And there were just elements of it that just made it so much fun. And you're almost, I don't know, I'd be interested to ask like other people who were in the room, like, were you still very much in tune to it being Cats? Or, at some point it felt like Cats was just the underlying theme. And we were still this was this was a production about ballroom culture. Because even though they were these cats, they embodied all the characters. They're not wearing cat costumes. They're wearing what I would consider to be ballroom finery. So their costumes are all over the place, but they work for every moment that they are in those costumes.
And was there a significant amount of dancing?
There was, but it felt like there was here's the tried and true element. Here's the tried and true bit from Cats, but then after that, it would be a ballroom category. So it would be like the category is fates, and then everything that comes after that moment was one of the competitions. And so, but yeah, there were moments like Jellicle Cats. That's the song, right? Jellicle Cats. Yeah. So that one's an all ensemble dancing moment, and but the choreography is ballroom. It's all of the elements of the competition, segments. So it was really interesting. And it made me think, since you were talking about reinterpretation, it was making me think about, wow, like, what if this group of artists thought about this for another musical, not just Cats? Like, what would it look like now that they've done this? And they don't have to infuse ballroom culture into it. They could find, another element that would work with whatever musical they thought about next.
But let me ask you on this one, why does the music of Cats work so well with ballroom dancing? There has to be some sort of thematic feel that would make it work. And I would imagine that's what you'd have to do with any other show you reinterpret. It's got to make sense. You can't just superimpose. Now we're going to do tango, Argentine tango on top of Sound of Music. It's like it still has to fit.
Well, I would say, and anyone listening, if I'm not doing this correctly, please chime in. I would say that when you're referring to this as ballroom, it's not ballroom dancing. This is ballroom culture.
Right.
And so ballroom dancing would be different, like, the classical, like, I don't know, like box steps and things like that.
I understand that.
But yes,
I still don't know why. Is Cats just, is it just camp and that's why it would work? Is it
possibly?
Trying to figure out why they work together if they do.
I think it's. I mean, we were thinking about it as well, and I think it's because Cats is an unconventional musical. Like it doesn't have a real plot except for here's what cats do.
Well, you're talking to the wrong person. I walked out of it twice.
Okay, but still, I think it's because, like, I don't know. Based on how people feel about Cats now, even though everyone in the generations before us seems to have seen it, it feels like. So, if any listeners out there are aware of that movie, oh my God! Now I just drew a blank on it. It was terrible. It's a terrible Showgirls.
Oh, okay.
That movie with Elizabeth Berkley from Saved by the Bell, like that movie is so bad that it's kind of good. You know what I mean? And so I feel like if you walk in kind of poking fun at Cats, you can have a good time. Like we saw Cats at the Miller Theater here in Philadelphia, formerly known as the Merriam, and what I noticed about that performance, and it was a tour, is that in our town, in Philadelphia, they had a couple of performers in the show who were Philadelphians. And so that was kind of the draw to them being, to us coming to the show. Mm-hmm. And so that created some excitement in the audience when that character appeared on stage. And so I was like, okay, that they're sort of breathing life into this by by just gimmick by gimmick, you know.
Right.
And so I wonder if that's the thing. It's like there's a part of you that's like, I know that Cats has this storied history and I've never seen it, so maybe that is the reason to go, even though everyone I know has said it's not good or hasn't liked it. Or
although it ran for 18 years.
Yes, so absolutely. Somebody liked it.
A show,
it brought Kansas to New York.
Yeah, that's right. And some of us will never understand it. However, congrats to them. But it's always a question why certain things click and other things don't. And sometimes even like the current revival of Merrily We Roll Along, a major flop, right? And now it's a major hit. Yeah. And it's this, while it's been reinterpreted, it's still the same show. It's how they're presenting it and how they're interpreting some of the actors, but they're not doing anything that is camp about it. They're not, like you said, not coming up with how do we make Cats feel different. They're not trying to make it feel different. It's still a basic musical comedy, Merrily We Roll Along. So it's really hard to know what works. And I think part of what, talking about Jellicle Ball, a lot of it comes down to there is an audience that didn't, I'm going to use the phrase, luck out by seeing the originals. And it is valuable to learn the history. Musical theaters are pure American-only history. Everyone else took it from us. And it's one of the few, just like jazz, it's one of the few things that is American-born. And it's still developing. What does it mean? The Rodgers and Hammerstein led to eventually to Sondheim. I mean, things change over time. And Leonard Bernstein in between that. And every time somebody makes a slight change or a slight advance, it advances the art form. Yeah. So now we wonder, well, where are we going with it next? Hopefully no more jukebox musicals. We can only take so many of those. But even if they're good, we can only take so many of those. But we have to, we're creating an American repertoire by saying you can see Carousel, but this time it's a diverse cast. Yeah. This time it's, even though the music's going to have to stay the same. I worked on a production of West Side Story. We were just discussing it this past week with a dancer that was in it, where they tried to throw some hip-hop moves into the mambo scene. Certain things don't work, right? It doesn't mean you can't update it a little bit, that you can't make it fresh. But if your cast in part of the script is yelling out, mambo, and then you don't do mambo, something doesn't work, right? And they were trying to do that at the time. Luckily, they got rid of it. But that was a strange part of rehearsal.
You're like, to them, the mambo is like, so good, so good, so good.
Yeah. Oh, no. It was, but so you can only update so much in certain ways. I mean, we have to question why, as good as Spielberg is, did we really need a new movie of West Side Story? Because the first one was perfection.
And
right?
does it hold up without the explanation of why?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because actually, I did watch what do they call it? A featurette, explaining the vision of this, and besides the fact that has the means and wanted to do this, so he did it. I mean, the conversation, or at least the way it was explained, is that they were trying to put more of an emphasis on the gentrification of the neighborhood. In the moment of the story.
Right. And you can do that without rewriting it.
Yeah. I mean, but honestly, it's like you just added some more footage, some more like B-roll.
Well, and also there are children, and I mean children, whose parents will never let them see the original West Side Story, or who may never come across it because it's an old movie. So for them,
Mm.
having a new version introduces them to a piece of American culture. Um,
It's
you know,
still
so
wonderful. But I feel like the new version of West Side Story, the takeaway is Ariana DeBose and the yellow dress. It's just the way it runs down the street. It just wins. The dress won the Oscar. You know,
the dress.
I like Ariana DeBose, but that dress won the Oscar. I don't know
Uh,
if did they get costume design awards
that's a good
because
question. I
yeah,
don't know. I don't
that
know.
alone.
It's
Um,
funny.
but yeah, I also think it's very interesting how Ansel Elgort was the lead, and he was, basically erased from all of the marketing, and
Yeah,
it wasn't really in any of the footage, and they totally made Tony an afterthought,
that's true.
which was interesting,
Okay, if you
but
say
because
so.
no, I mean, it was interesting, but because of the drama around the actor as a person, yeah, it turned
Mhm.
out that way. Yeah.
Well,
Think,
also it's funny about that. The last version of West Side Story that was on Broadway, the revival that never actually got a chance. The pandemic hit.
yeah.
They shut the show down. There are a lot of things wrong with it. Some things that were interesting, but the star, the guy playing Tony, and I'm looking for his name because my God, was he wonderful. And he should have been a major, major star. Here we go, YouTube again. There is a YouTube video of him singing Something's Coming
Hmm.
from the show, but in cabaret, not in the show. And the purity of his voice, if you get a chance, first, he's also a great actor. I hope he becomes a superstar, but because the show never happened, where he never got a chance.
Hmm.
So I'm trying to look him up as we're talking, but it's not a good idea to spend this time looking up somebody.
He,
There,
which character?
Tony.
Tony.
He,
Okay. I'm
um,
looking. We'll find it.
okay, you work on that. I'm trying to
Do,
think.
do, 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 do,
Yeah, we need
do,
to put it on
do, do,
Jeopardy,
do, 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 do. Yeah, yeah.
right? Who played
There is
the
a there
1920,
is a
2021? I think was the because it ended just after when they were going to bring it back after the pandemic. I think there were too many problems and too much money lost. They
was
couldn't
it
bring it back.
Isaac Powell?
Isaac Powell, thank you.
Yeah.
Look at if you can find him singing Something's Coming, and if you have an ear for gorgeous voices on Broadway, you will just fall in love. That's my little quip for the day to get people excited. And I hope somebody hires him and stars him in something magnificent.
Yeah.
It's a shame it's been years now, and he hasn't been back on Broadway.
Oh.
But anyway, things happen. That's what live entertainment's about. Now, if we can only bring the prices down, um, they're
Oh
just
my god! I
crazy.
feel like this is a never ending.
Never
I
ending
don't think
discussion.
we'll ever. I don't think we'll ever solve that problem. Like how to do this.
That's right. No, even some of these regional theaters. You go, well, there's one theater in blah blah blah, Indiana. Why are
Mhm.
they charging so much? The idea is to get people in to see theater, and they're
Yeah.
nonprofit. But
Yeah.
it costs so much money, and so few artists are making a living, much fewer than before the pandemic. So I don't know the answer to this. Otherwise, I'd run for office, but I have
Yeah.
no clue. I do know that there are still investors and theater owners getting rich. So somebody's doing okay, and as they say, the talent is suffering. And once again, and for anybody who's a parent listening, you're sending your child to college not to become an actor or a dancer or a singer, but to become a well-rounded person. And if they have superb talent, they will find a way to make a living at all of that. But you don't have to discourage them from understanding what it's like to be a creative talent. That is something we need more of. I will say here in New York, every audition, I've been to 24 college showcases this year. And out of them, I would say, and between 10 and 40 students at each one. So figure out how many people I've seen perform. They each have approximately 2 minutes to impress me and make me want to hire them. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right? And then they have to go home to, if they live in Arizona or in Florida, and then they have to decide, do I have enough money to move to New York with these outrageous rents? And then I have to get a job at waiting tables because I don't even know where to get the auditions. And then I need to do self-tapes because they're not doing live auditions as often as they used to. And it goes on and on and on, which is, again, back to the Jimmies. Thank God for the Jimmies. It is the great audition. We need more of those. And I feel bad for these college kids. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm looking forward to it because I've never seen I've never seen the awards, so it'll be interesting to see it tonight.
Yeah. And unfortunately, normally I would tape a show and then watch it at my leisure, but you can't do that when it's streaming. So we got to be there in front of the TV camera or the screen or whatever.
Well, you do have until the 27th. So if you do miss it, you can watch it in the morning. You can watch it the next day, but after the 27th, that's it. Video clips and photos.
Yeah, and that's all right. I mean, and there are boring parts of it. Don't get me wrong, but they do do interesting things with the different groupings that they put the kids in. It's for those of us who care, it's a worthwhile and you get to remember which kid is which. I found that interesting when there's so many of them. Anyway, moving right along.
Rolling along.
We're going to talk about the college that closed again in Philly and what we do about education.
Oh, it's so sad. No. Let's move.
It didn't mean that much to me when I first heard it. I mean, it bothered me, but I figured it's one school, right? No. And now it's not one school.
It's everything.
Yeah.
It was everything.
That's our problem.
150 years, and for it to fold so abruptly, like everyone is still trying to figure it out. Like this is as traumatizing as the pandemic was. Yeah. It's like so unexpected. Even at the press event, I went to the Wilma Theater today. They did a press event for the welcome party for their Tony. Like the Tony came to Philly, and so they got quite a few citations today. There were notable politicians came and spoke, and arts leaders, and one of them made a reference to we're still feeling the after effects of University of the Arts closing here on the Avenue of the Arts. It's part of what made the Avenue of the Arts so majestic and vibrant in what it is, because it was a pipeline for all of the arts organizations on the Avenue of the Arts. Right. And it was a good symbol of like our commitment to arts and culture in the city. Like we are a vibrant city of performers, and we're not the kind of city where you say, how close is New York? You can actually do it here. You can actually experience great live performance here. And it doesn't mean that you won't go to New York. It just means we're fortunate enough to have it here. But if our pipelines dry up, how long? You know,
Right.
University of the Arts is one organization, but it is now the only art institution that's solely dedicated to art in the
Well,
city.
and you and I have stayed away from politics through our podcast, but I have to mention that the governor of Florida, DeSantis, has wiped out all funding for all arts programs in the public schools. Wiped them out. I'm sorry. This is not about politics. I don't care what else you think about.
Yeah.
We are living in America, and we care. Those of us, I hope most of us care. I did meet, I guess this is a funny story. I once met one farmer in Ohio who didn't like music. He had no radio. He didn't listen to any music in any format whatsoever. And he said in the car he didn't listen to it. He just didn't like it. That's the only person in existence that I've ever heard say they don't like music of some sort. You can have different taste, but how do you tell people that if you can read, you're not going to know music and theater and dance and physical art and paint, and sculpture? Beyond me. It's, I guess their God is money.
And I guess, assuming positive intent, although I don't think there's anything positive about cutting arts programmings. I don't understand. The thing is, like, the more creative you become, like all the storytelling in all of art forms, creates more well-rounded people, a more well-rounded society, and a society of thinkers, and that's what they're afraid of. The same way when they'd come in with a crusade and destroy your city and then dismantle your entire culture. We're going to burn all your books and get rid of everything, so that way you know nothing of the way things were, and you can only accept the way things are.
Except for what we put on Facebook and Instagram and what we are telling you should think. And that's the end of a society. So we know we're not going to get rid of the arts. It's just not going to happen.
No.
But the fact that one person has that kind of power, and our children, forgive the reference, are the future, right? We can sing that along with Whitney Houston.
Careful the things you say.
Yeah,
Children will listen.
They will listen. And they're going to now and by the way, you're not going to keep them from it, but only parents who themselves like the arts and want to teach their children about the arts, their children will have the advantage. So what happens to the other kids? They're going to fall behind. I'm sorry. Learning just math and just science and just reading and just biology in of itself doesn't make a good life. It's a combination. So,
and also the problem is that there are a lot of people who are tuning out politics, and they're so overwhelmed by all of this that they are doing exactly what they want done.
Yeah.
People will play ignorance to this situation, and then they will get away with it, and then it'll be a problem, but later they'll just be so apathetic that they won't even notice. Right. And this is the reason why it appears that the left is super liberal. It's because they have to be aggressive about it so that it reaches some midway point of acceptance. And I know we've said this before, we have to overcorrect until we find the balance. And it's just like, it's not enough to say we can't let these people have the levers of power, because they're going to dismantle everything that we value. And, you can't get behind people who don't see you as well. Like the people who are out there, they're only siding with people for one or two issues. That's not enough. especially if the other issues are issues you don't agree with. You're like, yeah, but this one thing, I'm totally in your camp for this. It's the 17 other things I don't like. But because this one thing is my priority and I can't see anything else, I'm gonna go with this one anyway.
Yeah, and I think I may have said this on the podcast before, but I do think the most important part of my education came from the fact of the theater pieces I saw. Don't get me wrong, I went to a wonderful college. I did well in school. I care about history, blah, 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 all that stuff. But the how to see a perspective of something that isn't immediately in my family and neighborhood, to learn what's going on in Pakistan or from an American point of view. It could be an American Pakistani whose work that is. I'm hearing that one person's interpretation of what it's like to be a family member in an all-white family. That's something normally I wouldn't even think about. And I get to laugh and cry and feel things. And at the end, walk out of there going, gee, that was an experience I couldn't get in a book in high school. There may be books, but nobody introduced me to them. Right?
Yeah.
And by just the fact that I went in to see entertaining theater, I got an experience that added to my life tremendously. The great part about what you and I do, Darnelle, is we help make that theater. It's not just us watching it. You see more theater right now than, I don't know how your head doesn't explode. But Jellicle Ball, where else do you see a bunch of dancing cats being stupid? I'm sorry. That's the way I looked at it. But I walked out of there going, some of that dancing was pretty cool, right? Yeah. And the fact that people can physically do that and do it 8 times a week, and that talent that was on stage, that was enough to carry me. And if I just walk through life going to my neighborhood Target, how am I going to learn that? How am I going to see what gymnasts do at the Olympics and how it relates to what dancers do and football players do and how they're all connected, and how dancing, the ballet, improves a football player's work on the field? You learn that because actually there are plays about that. And you sit there and you go, hey, gee, in 1939, I just saw a musical that showed me how Hitler convinced the Germans that what he wanted to do was okay. It's a musical. So I'm entertained. I learn about history. I get an interpretation of it. It's not brainwashing me, because there are multiple characters on stage. I'm seeing it from different points of view. And I walk out of there thinking, feeling, laughing, and crying. Not bad for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Why would you leave that out of the schools? It is beyond me.
Speaking of Hitler.
Uh-oh.
No. There was a fringe piece at Edinburgh Fringe called Hitler's Tasters, and it was a group based out of New York, and the show, by its name, wasn't a draw, but the show is a hit, and it's still a hit, and it was these women who were hired to be Hitler's food tasters, and so that's their whole plot. But the story is compelling because it's like, I don't know, we're not for Hitler, but we're understanding that this was a part of his life, because everybody wanted him, everybody didn't like him. So the food that he ate had to be tested.
and that's it. Theater is storytelling, right? And sometimes you tell it with music, sometimes you tell it without music, sometimes you only tell it with dance, like Illinois on Broadway right now. There's right. Sometimes you tell it with mime. Sometimes you tell it with one person telling the story. Sometimes you have 44 people, like in The Grapes of Wrath that was done on Broadway. There weren't even enough dressing rooms for that many actors. And every day they went on stage and gave you a massive story about America during a certain era that never made it into my history books. And
well, think about it. They talk about single issue. Yes, they talk about single issue voters, right?
Mhm.
And they have tunnel vision. They can only see one thing. They can't see any possibility of anything else. But like when you think about the kind of things we've seen on stage, like Assassins, for example, Stephen Sondheim's The Musical. It's all about people who are killers, and it's humorous, it's funny, but it also gets into the psyche of these characters, and we learn something. We're not sitting there going, I am all for Assassins, like the next time I find one it's gonna be all song and dance. It's like no, it's just wow, there was so much going on that like there was a justification in their minds. But if we don't understand that, we're just going, no, that's bad. No questions asked. Unacceptable to try to think anything else. Don't try to humanize these people or understand their perspective, which doesn't make any sense. Like even even law enforcement is trying to understand the motives of a criminal.
Right.
So that they can figure out what to do next. But if you only see one thing and you don't want to understand the nuance of the world being gray, this is what happens. This is why they don't value arts in schools, because they don't understand that all of this, while it seems like fun and games, it's actual foundation building. It creates well-rounded human beings. And if we don't have them, they're easily controlled.
Sing us out, Darnelle.
That's how they win.
No,
you
come
can't win. You can't break even if you can't get out of the game.
That's not.
I don't know. It was a little whiz. It's a little whiz.
Okay. On that note,
you can't win, child. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
On that note,
listen, we're gonna cut it short today. The one other thing I wanted to mention was that Disney's Hercules will be opening on the West End in 2025, and it just prompted a question, because it is no secret how hard it is to produce on Broadway. Do you think we'll see more things opening first on the West End?
And the quick answer is it's always been that way, because it's always cheaper and it's a tryout. It used to be, during my era, before yours, Darnelle, that every show went to at least 5 cities in the United States, and it always included Philadelphia and Boston. Always. Washington, D.C. was a third one. Sometimes Atlanta, sometimes it went out San Francisco, different Chicago. It was always a tryout. And then it came in. Then during the Andrew Lloyd Webber era, everything started in London. And we brought over, there was one year on the Tony Awards, I think 80% of every show nominated had started in Great Britain. So This is not new. We're just back and forth. But,
okay.
All right, but we can discuss that further.
And you know what?
We can do a history of it.
Yeah. And you know what? That's the business.
Oh, God.
That's the business of theater, a working title. We are 10 minutes to curtain. Gotta go. I'm Darnelle Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And we'll see you at the Jimmies.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnelle Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emery production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook Twitter, and Instagram at EM3RYOTM.